Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Emotional Edge, where every story reminds us that kindness still lives in this world. Tonight, we bring you a tale that begins on a stormy Chicago evening, a single father, his little girl, and a frightened stranger whispering, "Please, don't hurt me." What happened next would change 3 lives forever. It's a story about courage, compassion, and the quiet power of stopping when others keep walking. Stay with us, because sometimes the smallest act of kindness can spark the biggest transformation. This is a story that will warm your heart, maybe even bring a tear to your eye, and remind you why love and humanity still matter most. The rain fell in cold silver sheets across downtown Chicago, drumming on the sidewalks and glistening beneath the orange glow of the streetlights. Ethan Cole, a 36-year-old single father, held tightly to the small hand of his 7-year-old daughter, Mia, as they hurried home from her evening dance class. The child's pink raincoat shone against the darkness, her laughter rising above the sound of the storm as she splashed through puddles. Ethan smiled faintly. His body ached from long hours at the auto shop, but moments like this reminded him why he pushed through each day. For her. They turned down a narrow side street to save a few minutes. The alley smelled faintly of rain and oil, its puddles reflecting fragments of neon from nearby signs. Halfway through, Ethan saw a shape slumped against the brick wall, a woman, motionless, her clothes soaked through. He stopped. Something in the way her shoulders trembled didn't feel right. He instinctively placed an arm in front of Mia to keep her close. "Stay right beside me, sweetheart." As they drew nearer, the woman looked up and Ethan saw fear flash across her pale, rain-streaked face. "Please, don't hurt me," she whispered, her voice shaking. "I can't walk." Her eyes were red from tears, her blonde hair plastered against her cheeks. Ethan crouched, lowering his tone to something calm and steady. "It's okay," he said. "We're not here to hurt you. My name's Ethan, and this is my daughter, Mia. You're safe now." The woman winced and touched her ankle. "I think it's broken. My heel caught in a grate. I fell, and my phone's dying." Ethan gently slid his jacket under her to keep her from the cold pavement. "Mia," he said softly, "remember what we practiced? Call 911? The little girl nodded, her tiny hands steady on the phone. As they waited, Ethan shielded the woman with his umbrella, rain running down his shoulders. In that quiet corner of the city, a stranger, a father, and a child, compassion quietly rewrote 3 lives. 3 days had passed since that night. The storm had long cleared, but Ethan Cole couldn't shake the memory of the frightened woman in the rain. Between work at the auto shop and helping Mia with her spelling homework, he often caught himself wondering if she was all right. Early one Saturday morning, while flipping pancakes on their old kitchen stove, his phone buzzed with an unknown number. "Mr. Cole?" A soft, uncertain voice said. "This is Olivia Hart, the woman you helped in the alley." Ethan blinked in surprise, wiping his hands on a towel. "Oh, hi. How are you doing?" "Better," she replied, her tone carrying both warmth and embarrassment. "My ankle was broken, but the doctors say I'll recover fine. I just needed to thank you and your daughter. You didn't have to stop." Ethan leaned against the counter. "It was nothing. Anyone would have done the same." A small pause followed, then her voice lowered. "No, they wouldn't have," she hesitated. "The security footage showed 7 people walked past before you came. 7. Ethan didn't know what to say. He stared out the window where sunlight spilled across the wet street, remembering that night, her fear, Mia's calm little voice on the phone. "I've spent my life surrounded by people," Olivia continued quietly. "But sitting there, hurt and helpless, I realized I didn't have anyone who'd show up for me just because they cared." From the other room, Mia's laughter broke the silence, light and free. Olivia heard it through the receiver and smiled faintly. "That's your daughter, isn't it? She sounded so brave that night. You've raised her well." Ethan chuckled softly. "She's the best part of me." Another pause, this one comfortable. "When I can walk again," Olivia said, "I'd like to take you both to lunch. Not out of obligation, but gratitude." Ethan hesitated, then smiled. "Sure, Miss Hart. Lunch sounds nice." When the call ended, Ethan looked at Mia chasing sunlight across the kitchen floor and thought, maybe some kindnesses aren't accidents. Maybe they're beginnings. The small cafe smelled of roasted coffee and fresh pastries. Sunlight streaming through tall windows that looked out onto the bustling Chicago streets. Ethan Cole wasn't sure why he'd agreed to meet Olivia Hart, but when Mia had asked excitedly if they could go, he couldn't say no. He'd never been inside a place this refined before. Soft jazz played in the background. The waiters wore crisp white shirts, and the air felt calm in a way he wasn't used to. Olivia was already there, sitting by the window in a pale cream coat, her ankle still braced but her smile warm and genuine. When she saw them, she stood carefully, wincing slightly but determined. "Ethan, Mia, thank you for coming," she said, her tone full of sincerity. Mia shyly handed her a small dandelion she'd picked on the walk over. "It's for you," the little girl said. Olivia's face softened as she accepted it. "It's beautiful. Thank you, sweetheart." The three of them talked at first about light things, the weather, school, how Olivia was healing. But soon the conversation drifted into deeper waters. Olivia admitted she was divorced, with an 8-year-old daughter named Sophie, who mostly lived with her ex-husband. "I thought working hard would make me a better mother," she said quietly, "but it just made me an absent one." Ethan nodded, his gaze steady but kind. "Kids don't need perfect parents," he said. "They just need us to show up." Olivia smiled sadly. "You sound like someone who's been through a lot." He chuckled. "You could say that. Life's taught me what matters." When the bill came, Olivia instinctively reached for it, but Ethan stopped her. "You've probably had people do things for you all your life," he said gently. "Let this one be different." She looked at him, this man who had nothing to gain, yet kept giving anyway, and for the first time in years, Olivia felt seen. Outside, the rain had begun again, but this time, it didn't feel cold. It felt like the city itself was washing something old away, making space for something new. That evening, long after Ethan Cole and Mia had gone home, Olivia Hart sat by the window of her high-rise apartment, the skyline glittering beneath her like a galaxy of ambition. Yet, for the first time, those city lights felt distant, a reflection of everything she'd built and everything she'd lost. Her ankle was healing, but something deeper inside her wasn't. She thought of her daughter, Sophie, who was just 8, growing up mostly with her father while she drowned herself in work and deadlines. Olivia couldn't remember the last time she'd brushed Sophie's hair or sat beside her during bedtime stories. The thought tightened her chest. The next morning, she canceled all her meetings. Her assistant sounded shocked. Olivia Hart never canceled meetings. But she didn't explain. She just drove across the city to Sophie's school. When Sophie stepped out of class and saw her standing there, her eyes went wide with disbelief. "Mom," she said softly, as though it might be a dream. Olivia knelt, ignoring the ache in her healing ankle, and opened her arms. "Hi, sweetheart. I thought maybe we could go get ice cream. Just us." The child's hesitation lasted only a second before she nodded, smiling shyly. That afternoon was quiet, but beautiful. Sophie talked about her friends, her drawings, and the piano song she'd learned. Olivia listened to every word as though each one was a gift. For the first time in years, her phone stayed silent in her purse. She didn't miss it. That night, she called Ethan. "You were right," she said softly. It's not too late to change, but it's harder than I thought. Ethan chuckled. Change always is. But showing up, that's the first step. His voice carried the kind of steadiness she'd been missing all her life. After the call, Olivia looked at the photo of her and Sophie on her nightstand, covered in dust. She picked it up, wiped it clean, and smiled. Somewhere between rain and regret, she was learning how to begin again. As the weeks turned into months, Olivia Hart's life began to look different. Softer, slower, more human. She spent her mornings having breakfast with Sophie, her evenings walking by the lake, and her weekends visiting Ethan Cole and little Mia at the auto shop. Sometimes she'd bring sandwiches or coffee for the crew, but mostly she came just to sit and talk. The three of them had grown close in a quiet, unspoken way. Olivia often found herself watching Ethan interact with Mia, the patience in his eyes, the way he listened, the warmth in every word. It stirred something inside her, something that had been asleep for too long, a longing for connection, for meaning beyond numbers and success. One afternoon, while they sat in a small diner, Olivia spoke what had been on her mind for weeks. "Ethan," she began, tracing the rim of her cup, "I want to build something that matters. Something that helps families like ours. Parents who work hard but never have enough time for their kids." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "You mean your company?" She nodded. "Yes. I want to start an initiative. Flexible hours, childcare support, community programs. I can fund it, but I need someone who understands what families actually need." Ethan laughed softly. "Olivia, I fix cars, not people." "You fix more than that," she said gently. "You remind people what really matters." That's how Family First began. An idea born from a rainy night and two hearts that decided kindness shouldn't stop at one act. Ethan became her advisor, helping her design programs that worked for real parents. Olivia handled the funding and logistics. Late nights turned into long conversations over pizza boxes, with Mia and Sophie coloring at the table nearby. For the first time in years, Olivia's penthouse wasn't quiet. It was filled with laughter and life. Through those nights, both Ethan and Olivia realized they weren't just building a program. They were rebuilding themselves. Compassion had become their blueprint and hope, their foundation. 2 years later, the morning sun stretched across the Chicago skyline, painting gold over the glass towers that once defined Olivia Hart's life. But today, she stood inside one of those towers with a heart that beat differently, slower, warmer, fuller. The Hall of Heart Technologies was filled with families, laughter, and music. Banners fluttered above the stage. Family First Initiative, celebrating 2 years of compassion. Olivia adjusted the microphone on the podium, nerves fluttering in her chest despite the hundreds of speeches she had given in her career. This one was different. As she glanced at the audience, her eyes found Ethan Cole sitting in the front row beside Mia, both smiling proudly, and just beside them little Sophie, holding a bouquet of daisies, waved at her mother. Olivia's throat tightened. She took a deep breath. 2 years ago, she began, her voice gentle, I sat alone in the rain, hurt, scared, and unable to walk. 7 people passed me by before one man and his daughter stopped. They didn't know who I was. They just cared. That moment changed everything. The room fell silent. I used to think success meant control, power, perfection, results. But that night, I learned something different. Success means being human enough to stop for someone who's fallen. Her voice trembled, eyes glistening. This program, Family First, was born because of them, because compassion shouldn't be rare. It should be part of who we are. The audience rose to their feet, clapping softly at first, then louder, until the entire hall thundered with applause. Ethan stood too, humbled, his eyes meeting hers. No words were needed. Both understood that kindness had rewritten not only their stories, but countless others. Sophie ran up to the stage, hugging her mother tightly as the crowd cheered. Tears streamed down Olivia's cheeks as she whispered, "Thank you for teaching me what love really means." Sometimes life gives us moments that seem small: a rainy night, a quiet decision, a stranger who chooses to stop. But those moments, they ripple farther than we'll ever know. Ethan didn't save Olivia because he wanted gratitude. He stopped because kindness was simply who he was. And from that single act, an entire community learned what true strength really means: showing up for each other when it matters most. In the end, success isn't measured in titles or wealth, but in the hearts we touch along the way, because kindness doesn't vanish, it multiplies.